Hello, beautiful souls. Tonight we're talking about March 20th and why this particular day is genuinely rare in astrology. Two major shifts land within the same 24 hours. Mercury stations direct in Pisces, ending the retrograde that's had so many of us feeling foggy and stuck. And the Sun crosses into Aries, the spring equinox, the astrological new year. The entire zodiac resets, both on the same day. Every sign feels this one, and we're going to go through all 12 tonight. But here's what I want you to understand first, because this is the piece most people miss. Mercury didn't just retrograde in Pisces. It entered Aries briefly back in late February. There was this flash of clarity, this sense of I'm ready, let's move. And then Mercury slipped backward into Pisces, and the fog rolled in. Old memories, old feelings, conversations that suddenly went sideways. If you felt like you had a moment of knowing exactly what you wanted and then lost it, that was this transit. That was Mercury touching fire and then pulling you back into water. And on March 20th, that review is complete. Mercury stations direct at 14 degrees. Pisces and the Sun steps into Aries at the exact same time. The fog lifts and the new year begins on the same breath. And there's something I want you to notice about the quality of this clarity, because it matters. Mercury stations direct while Saturn is also in Pisces. Saturn has been here for a while now, quietly asking all of us to grow up in the places where we'd rather stay comfortable. What that means is the understanding arriving on March 20th isn't giddy or naive. It's grounded. It's the kind of knowing that comes with experience, the clarity of someone who has lived through enough to trust their own judgment. Saturn makes sure of that. And honestly, I think that's more valuable than some burst of youthful optimism. This is mature clarity. You've earned it. Now, let me explain why the equinox piece matters so much. Because Mercury goes direct a few times every year, and the equinox comes every spring. Those events individually are significant but familiar. What's unusual is the convergence both happening on the same day. Your mental clarity returns at the precise moment the zodiac says, begin again. The equinox is the Sun crossing 0 degrees Aries. And in astrology, 0 Aries is what we call a world point. It's the very first degree of the very first sign, the place where the entire wheel begins. Ancient astrologers considered the Aries ingress the single most important moment of the year. They cast charts for this exact moment to forecast what was coming for entire nations. This wasn't considered a moment. It was considered the moment. And because the Aries ingress chart sets the tone for the entire year ahead, the fact that Mercury is stationing direct at the same time tells us something about 2026 itself. This is a year where clarity wins, where the fog doesn't get the last word. And there's something I find grounding about this, especially right now. The equinox is also a physical, astronomical event. Equal day, equal night. A true balance point. And after this, in the northern hemisphere, the light grows. That's not a metaphor. That's measurable. The planet itself is tilting toward more light. Mercury went back into Pisces like the tide pulling out slowly, quietly, taking your clarity with it. March 20th is when it turns. You can almost feel the water shifting direction. Now, where this convergence falls in your chart is what determines how you'll actually experience it. 14 degrees Pisces, where Mercury stations direct, activates a specific house in your chart. 0 degrees Aries, where the equinox lands, lights up another. Those two houses are where your fog clears and your new beginning arrives. I've set up a completely free birth chart reading for you at mailinastro.com. You enter your birth details, takes about 60 seconds, and you'll see your full personal cosmic blueprint. That way, as we go through each sign tonight, you can see exactly which houses are lighting up for you. The link is right there in the description, completely free. Before we go sign by sign, I want to hear from you. During this Mercury retrograde, especially the last few weeks, did something from your past resurface? A memory, a person, a feeling you thought you'd finished with? Tell me in the comments what came back. I have a feeling we've all been swimming in very similar waters. Let's start with the signs that are feeling this convergence most directly. Aries, this is your season. The sun crosses into your first house on March 20th, and your solar year begins. This is the most personal new beginning in the zodiac, the astrological equivalent of your birthday, your reset, your clean page. But here's what makes this year's ingress different for you. Mercury has been retrograding through your 12th house. The 12th house is the most private room in your chart. It governs your subconscious, your dreams, the things you process beneath the surface where nobody else can see. And Mercury retrograde has been stirring that room up for weeks. If you've been unusually tired, if your dreams have been vivid and strange, if old grief or old longing surfaced without warning, that was Mercury moving through your 12th house, asking you to sit with things you'd tucked away. On March 20th, that process completes. Mercury stations direct, and the sun steps into your sign on the same day. You emerge from the inner world into your own light, and I want you to notice something in the days that follow, a sense of, I'm back, that you might not have even realized was missing. Your energy returns, your decisiveness returns. You didn't lose yourself these past few weeks. You were doing deep inner housekeeping. Now you walk out the front door and the sun is shining. Pisces, I need you to listen closely, because Mercury stations direct in your sign, in your first house. You're getting the most direct hit of anyone in the zodiac right now. The first house is you, your identity, your self-expression, how you communicate, how the world experiences you when you walk into a room. Mercury retrograde has been sitting on that house, fogging up the glass between you and everyone around you. If you felt misunderstood lately, if your words haven't been landing the way you meant them, if you felt like people aren't quite seeing the real you, this is why. And on March 20th, that fog lifts directly off of you. At the same time, the equinox lights up your second house, the house of money, self-worth, and what you value. A new cycle begins around what you're worth and what you'll no longer tolerate being undervalued for. In practical terms, conversations you've been avoiding become possible again. Your words come back. Your sense of self sharpens. And you start making different decisions about what you'll accept, not from anger, but from clarity. From knowing, finally, what the fog was hiding. Gemini, your ruling planet stations direct. You feel Mercury retrogrades more intensely than any other sign because Mercury governs how you think, process, and communicate, and that's the core of who you are. When Mercury goes retrograde, it's like someone turned down the volume on your sharpest instrument. On March 20th, someone turns it back up. Mercury stations direct in your 10th house career, public life, your reputation, how you're seen professionally. If something at work has been murky or stalled, if a professional situation has felt impossible to get clarity on, if you've sent emails that were misread or had meetings that went in circles, that changes now. The fog lifts on your public life, and the equinox activates your 11th house community, friendships, your vision of the future. New social energy arrives alongside that career clarity. You start seeing not just what you're doing, but who you want to be doing it with. Virgo, you share Mercury as your ruler, so everything I said to Gemini about feeling retrogrades deeply applies to you too. But for you, Mercury stations direct in your 7th house. The 7th house is partnerships, relationships, the person sitting across the table from you. The fog has been between you and someone else. Maybe you've been misreading a partner's intentions. Maybe a conversation has gone circular for weeks without resolution. Maybe you've been unable to decide how you feel about someone, or unable to see them clearly enough to know what you want. March 20th is when that glass clears. You'll see them, really see them, or you'll see that it's time to make a decision you've been postponing. The equinox lights up your 8th house, which governs deep transformation, shared resources, intimacy, and the things we don't talk about at dinner parties. Something is ready to change at a fundamental level. If you're Aries, Pisces, Gemini, or Virgo and something just clicked, drop your sign in the comments. These 4 signs are carrying the heaviest weight of this transit, and I want to hear what's been happening for you. Now, let's talk about the cardinal signs, because when the sun hits 0 degrees Aries, it activates every cardinal signs chart in a very direct way. Cancer. The equinox lands in your 10th house career, public reputation, how the world sees you. A fresh start arrives in your professional life or your public role. For some of you, this could mean a new position or a new project. For others, it's subtler, people suddenly noticing your work, a shift in how colleagues or family members see your contributions. Mercury stations direct in your 9th house, the house of beliefs, higher learning, travel, and the big questions about meaning. If you've been wrestling with a philosophical question, if your worldview has felt shaky or uncertain, if you've been wondering what you really believe about something important, clarity returns. The larger picture comes back into focus, and you remember what you stand for and why it matters. Libra. This equinox hits your 7th house, directly partnerships, marriage, significant one-on-one relationships. The astrological new year begins for you in the realm of other people. For some of you, that's a new relationship arriving. For others, it's an existing one shifting into a different gear, deeper, clearer, or perhaps honestly acknowledged as something that's run its course. Or it might simply be a clarity about what you need from partnership, something you haven't been able to put into words until now. Mercury stations direct in your 6th house, which governs health, daily routines, and the structure of your everyday life. Something practical you've been struggling with, a health question, a scheduling problem, a daily habit that wouldn't stick settles into place. Your daily life stabilizes and your relationships clarify at the same time. That's a powerful combination. Capricorn. The equinox lights up your 4th house, home, family, roots, the emotional foundation of your life. Something new begins at the base. This could be literal a move, a renovation, a grandchild, a family gathering that changes the dynamic. Or it could be internal, a new sense of what home means to you at this stage of life, or a quiet decision about where and how you want to live. Mercury stations direct in your 3rd house communication, siblings, your local community, the conversations you have every day. A message that's been stuck gets delivered. A misunderstanding with a sibling or neighbor clears up. You find the words you've been searching for. Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you're the cardinal signs, and when the sun hits 0, Aries, it squares or opposes your sun directly. That's not something to worry about. That's activation. That's the universe saying it's time to move. Tell me in the comments which house resonated most for you. Having Mercury stationed direct on the equinox is like waking up on the first warm morning of spring and realizing your glasses are clean. The world didn't change overnight, you can just finally see it clearly. Let me walk through the rest of the signs, because every one of you deserves to hear where this lands. Leo. The equinox activates your 9th house. Expansion, travel, higher learning, publishing, teaching, seeing the world through a wider lens. If you've been feeling restless or craving something bigger, something beyond your usual routine, this is the universe opening that door. You might sign up for a course, book a trip you've been thinking about, or find yourself in a conversation that completely shifts your perspective. Mercury stations direct in your 8th house, bringing clarity to something deep, possibly financial, possibly emotional. An inheritance question, a shared resource situation, an emotional truth you've been circling around without quite being able to name. The fog lifts on what's been hidden, and what you find there is more manageable than it felt in the dark. Taurus. Your equinox activation is beautifully quiet, and I want you to trust that. The sun enters your 12th house, the same inner world I described for Aries. But for you, this is where your new year begins. It begins internally, spiritually, beneath the surface. Don't mistake this for nothing happening. Everything that emerges for you in April and May is being seeded right now in your private inner world. Pay attention to your dreams, your intuitions, the things that cross your mind for no apparent reason. They're not random. Mercury stations direct in your 11th house. Friendships, community, your social circles. A friendship that's felt strained or confusing finds its footing again. You reconnect with someone, or you understand why a certain connection has felt off. By April, you'll know who your people are. Scorpio. The equinox fires up your 6th house, health, daily routines, work, the structure of how you move through an ordinary day. Fresh energy arrives for restructuring, for finally committing to that health practice you've been putting off, for approaching your work with a different kind of focus. Mercury stations direct in your 5th house, creativity, romance, joy, the things that make life feel like more than just responsibility and obligation. If your creative spark has felt dim these past few weeks, or if a romantic situation has been genuinely confusing, clarity returns to the part of your chart that governs pleasure and self-expression. Let yourself enjoy something this week without over-analyzing it. You've earned that. Sagittarius. The equinox lights your 5th house. Creativity, romance, children, spontaneous joy. A spark returns that you may not have even noticed had gone quiet until it comes back, and you think, oh, there you are. Mercury stations direct in your 4th house, home and family. Something domestic that's been unresolved finds its answer. A conversation with a family member that's been going nowhere finally arrives somewhere real. The combination is genuinely warm for you. Your home life settles and your joy comes back online at the same time. That's a good spring. Aquarius. The equinox activates your 3rd house communication, ideas, learning, short trips, the daily exchange of words and thoughts. Fresh intellectual energy arrives. You'll want to read something new, take a class, start writing, have the kind of conversation that makes you lose track of time. Your mind wakes up in a way it hasn't felt in weeks. Mercury stations direct in your 2nd house, finances and self-worth. What you're worth becomes clearer, and not just in terms of money. You begin to value your own ideas, your own time, your own contributions, differently, more accurately, more generously. It's about time. Now that you've heard your sign, let's talk about what you actually do with this energy, because understanding what's happening is only half of it. March 20th itself. Pay attention to what you're thinking, feeling, and wanting on this specific day. The equinox is a seed moment. 0 degrees Aries responds to clear, direct intention. If you have a journaling practice, this is the day to use it. Write down what you want to begin, not a vague wish list, one clear intention. The world point amplifies whatever is placed there, and ancient astrologers took this very seriously. So should you. If conversations have been stuck, and for many of you they have, especially those of you with cardinal or mutable sign placements, March 20th is when the logjam starts to move. You don't need to force anything. Mercury stationing direct does the heavy lifting. Just be open to the conversation finding its way back to you. Between March 20th and about April 7th, Mercury is direct but still moving through its post-retrograde shadow. This is the settling period, and most channels won't explain this part. Mercury is retracing the degrees it already covered during the retrograde, so think of it as going over familiar ground with new eyes. Things that were confused will start resolving, but give them room. Don't demand instant answers on March 21st. Let clarity build gradually. This is an excellent window for revisiting, rereading emails that confused you, reapproaching projects that stalled, reopening conversations that went sideways. The re prefix belongs to this window. If you can, wait until after April 7th for signing important contracts or making binding commitments. I don't say that to create anxiety, most things will be fine. But if you have the luxury of timing, the clarity is noticeably sharper once Mercury clears its shadow completely. And if you grabbed your chart earlier from mailinastro.com, look at which house has early Aries on the cusp. That's where your strongest green light is once Mercury enters Aries again in early April. April 7th onward, Mercury clears its shadow and re-enters Aries. Now you have both clarity and momentum. This is the full green light. Whatever seeds you planted at the equinox start to show visible growth. The decisions you were hesitant about feel obvious. The conversations you needed to have become simple. The fog is fully gone, and you remember who you are when you're not second-guessing yourself. If you want me to go deeper on your sign specifically, tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I take requests seriously. Your sign might become its own video. Before I let you go tonight, I want to step back from the individual signs and talk about what this really means. Not just for your chart, for all of us. We've all been in this fog together. Not just personally, collectively. The world has felt harder to read these last few weeks. Communication has broken down in public life, in families, between friends. Things that should be straightforward have been anything but. Mercury retrograde in Pisces affects the collective mind. It makes everything feel like it's underwater, still visible, but distorted, hard to grasp, slipping through your fingers when you reach for it. The equinox is a collective reset, the astrological new year. And I want to say something specifically to those of you who have lived through enough seasons to know what fog feels like, and more importantly, to know that it always lifts. You know this in your bones. You've weathered things that would have broken a younger version of yourself, and you're still here. But sometimes, even when you know the fog will lift, it helps to have the sky confirm what your body already understands. There's a teaching in Mercury's journey these past few weeks that I think is worth sitting with. Mercury entered Aries and touched that fire energy, the impulse to act, to decide, to charge forward. And then it was pulled back into Pisces, back into water, back into feeling. And I think many of us experience that as frustrating or confusing, or like something had gone wrong, like we'd failed somehow, like we should have been further along by now. But nothing went wrong. The retrograde was saying something important. You cannot rush past what you're carrying. You cannot outrun grief by sprinting into action. You cannot skip the feeling part and jump straight to the fresh start. Aries wanted to go. Pisces said, not yet. Sit with this first. Honor what you're holding before you set it down. And you did. Whether you realized it or not, you did the work. Every night you lay awake with old thoughts circling, every wave of unexpected emotion, every moment you couldn't find the right words for something that used to be easy, that was the processing happening. That was the inner work completing itself quietly in the dark. You don't plant a garden in the dark because you're lost. You plant it in the dark because that's when seeds go into the ground. Everything you sat with these past few weeks, that was planting season. The equinox is the first light reaching the soil. Now, Mercury stations direct in Pisces, and the equinox arrives in the same breath. The work is honored. Now begin. And here's what I want you to carry with you from tonight. You don't begin again as someone untouched by what you've been through. You begin as someone shaped by it. The clarity that's arriving on March 20th isn't the naive clarity of someone who hasn't experienced confusion. It's the hard-won clarity of someone who sat in the fog, who trusted it would lift even when it felt endless, and who came through it with something she didn't have before. That's not a consolation prize. That's wisdom, and it belongs to you. You don't need to have everything figured out by tomorrow. You don't need a plan for every area of your life by the time the equinox arrives. You just need to be willing to step forward when the moment comes. The sky is making room for you. Come back and tell me what shifts. I mean that I read every comment and I want to know how March 20th landed for you. Your sign, your story, what cleared up, what surprised you. I'll be here. If this is the kind of depth you've been looking for in astrology content, I'm here every week. I'd love to have you. Take care of yourselves tonight, and remember the fog lifts and the new year begins on the same breath. That breath is almost here. You're ready for it. Good night, beautiful souls.